All right, it has finally happened. We are back on Loveline, and Muggs has delivered the goods.
Woo!
Dr. Tar is here, as is our special guest, Nick Hexum. Welcome, Nick.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
I was joking at the top of Loveline tonight that when we heard you were coming on, I was like, what a get.
Yeah.
What a scoop. Nick Hexum, one of the biggest KROQ artists of all time on Loveline. I'm like, I wonder if he's ever done Loveline.
Yeah.
Right? So I said, we give Muggs here, who was the kind gentleman who let you in, we give him very minimal tasks. And I don't know if you have anyone in the 311 camp like that, but we love him, but we know his ceiling. And so I said, hey man, could you do some research and see if Nick Hexum was ever on Loveline? And so Muggs found out, not very much, but I think he found out something he wanted to share.
That according to the AI Google search, 311 in a form of the band, Nick Hexum, yourself, or Nick Hexum and Peanut have been on Loveline, not confirmed, but at least over a dozen times.
Wow.
I'm saying it's pushing 20. Wow. I was the guy that they would call me when somebody canceled, and I just lived in Laurel Canyon, so I'd be like, I'll be there. But one night I got a little too tipsy. I was like out at dinner, and I came in and was like a little like not ready to being on the air. So I had to call Dr. Drew and make some amends for my bad behavior on the air. Ooh. Because you can't say bad words.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and that's still the rule, Nick. We'll have you know.
Okay, good.
As you know,
same rule.
Okay, good.
But it's it's funny. It's kind of course, you have a long history with the sort of flagship station here of Loveline and KROQ as an artist. But I thought that this was such a perfect time to talk to you because of this new EP you put out, solo EP, Waxing Nostalgic. And at the root of it, at the center of it, from what I've heard you talk about, is vulnerability and this desire that you wanted to be more vulnerable and let your guard down. And that's something we talk about, Dr. Tar, a lot on Loveline in terms of just the importance of it from a relational standpoint, from a personal development standpoint. But it did strike me, as a guy who's been making music now for over 30 years, that you still felt there were frontiers to sort of pursue as Nick Hexum and as a songwriter.
I do. I mean, I think there's always natural fronts that people need to keep trying to take down, whether it's in your art or in your personal relationship, and also just reading some interesting books about how the best art comes from just like really going into difficult places where people really relate. Like there's a song on my EP called Lonely Existence that's like about what it's like to be stuck in an addiction, and like how when you're stuck in your secrets. And so I was like, I'm going to go somewhere I haven't gone before, like a firsthand account of what that was like. So, yeah, it's just important to share and be vulnerable.
Do you think? Go on, Dr.
Are you vulnerable in your romantic relationship?
I think so. I have a very good marriage of 17 years, and but I think that it's very important for me to always be working on my part to, if maybe me and my wife are getting into like some control issue where I'm like, wait, this is me being the controlling person here, of like, and owning up to that is super important.
Yeah, that takes a lot of self-awareness.
Yep. And I need people to bounce it off of to help me see that. And, there's, you got to stay connected with people and have like trusted advisors that are, whether it's professional or friends or whatever.
Getting back to the project real quick for the 311 fans listening and the Nick Hexum fans listening, did you feel there were topics that were easier to write about as Nick Hexum than, say, to pour through the filter of the 311 universe?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, like, I wrote a song with my sister about what life was like in 1978, and it was just so personal, of like going through what life was when I was 8 years old and growing up in Omaha, and when the latest technology was like a Slinky or a Magic 8-Ball, and how different that is. But and then we cut together a music video from our Super 8 home movies, and I cannot watch that without getting misty, because it's just like the most nostalgic thing ever. So that was something that felt right for like a solo album. But I also think that you can still be very revelatory and self-exposing in a band situation too. So I think I'm kicking open this higher level of honesty, and hopefully in everything I do. And Rick Rubin's book, The Creative Act, was very very helpful to me. And there's another book called Saved by a Song, which is by Mary Gaucher, which is about how great art comes from going into difficult times and just being super revealing, and how people really feel that honesty when you go into trauma or anything that like that, and there's a healing to that when you share that.
No, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
There's, when you talked about honesty, I think there's a lot of honesty in good sex.
Okay.
And I mean, for real, there's a lot of honesty in good sex.
That was going to be my next question.
Like, are there honesty in good sex? Was that your question?
think, yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, you know what's interesting about that is I think there needs to be sort of, you think honesty or empathy?
Honesty. Sex is the most vulnerable form of being a human.
But you can have great sex with somebody you don't even know. You know what I mean? No?
As good as someone you know.
Oh, maybe not. If we're talking, greatest of all time, no.
We're talking about like the best sex life ever. I think it takes a lot of honesty. There's a lot of people that are faking it or performing it, or they're not truly enjoying the sexual experience. So I was wondering,
Oh gosh. Here we go.
what is the role of vulnerability in your sex life?
I mean, honestly, I think a lot of that is natural chemistry. There's a lot of things that can really be worked on in a relationship, but I'm thinking of was it either Mad Men or the Masters of Sex, that Showtime show where they talked about how like people kiss because they want to smell. Like that's the real thing behind it. Dogs smell each other's butts, but humans kiss because they want. And like that's like such an important thing that you kind of either have or you don't. But there are many things that you can work on. But honestly, like that is something that you kind of can't fake. And so fortunately, I click well with my wife.
Yeah. Love that. Well, I mean, scientifically, scent is the most accurate form of attraction.
Yeah.
Because there are so many other things, right? Like what clothes you're wearing, your hair, your job, how much money one makes. But the scent really doesn't lie. So it is the most accurate predictor of true attraction.
Yeah.
You think that's why Muggs didn't get a call back from the flatulence oral woman?
Why?
This was a story from last week, Nick, where our producer Muggs did the Hot Ones challenge, which is, I guess, Muggs taught us this, but it's
Eating chicken
you have
wings.
to eat 8 different chicken wings, and then he thought a good idea was to call up a girl after that, and she didn't call you back, did she?
No, she called me back.
She called you
Oh,
back.
wow.
All right.
After
Then maybe
the
it was about the smell,
flatulence during oral sex. Wow.
even despite the flatulence. Okay.
It's the name of my band, Despite the Flatulence.
Despite the flatulence. There you
I
go.
listened to that.
It's going places.
Spotify it.
You guys are going to play the Terrace this year at Acoustic Christmas, I heard. I wanted to, I hate to keep going back to music stuff, but while having you here, you mentioned Rick Rubin's book. And did you guys ever, as a band, work with Rick?
Not as a band. My musical childhood dreams came true when I was asked to be part of the South Park soundtrack with Joe Strummer from The Clash. And so he put together this super group that he invited people, and he asked me to play guitar, Flea on bass, Tom Morello also on guitar, Rick Rubin producing, DJ Bone Break from the band X on drums, Ben Montench from I'm doing a lot of name dropping because it was like I could not believe that I was in the studio with these people, and Rick Rubin produced. So I have done one song with him, and it was really like we had a lot of deep talks, and I could see that he was already. This was in like 97, 98, and he was already very much into the meditation, giving thanks before the meal, and like this really long Indian food meal before we even recorded. So it was pretty cool.
So why do you think that Rick works so amazing with certain artists, but then other artists will say, it just didn't work for them with Rick. It seems like polarizing isn't the term, but his approach just doesn't work with certain artists. But you having worked with him, why do you think that is?
Yeah, there was a little bit of talk at one point that we could possibly work with him, but I don't know. He's kind of the hottest ticket in town, and now he's got that place Shangri-La out in Malibu. So call me, Rick.
Yeah, exactly.
You mentioned meditation. Do you meditate regularly?
I go through phases. I haven't done it lately, but I would say the most intense meditation time that I had was right before I started having kids, and I was like really like looking for like, what am I doing here? And I had a lot of free time before kids, of course. And I was going to these like Buddhist meetings, and I remember I was reading The Power of Now when it first came out, and also Eckhart's second book, A New Earth, was just wonderful. And I was doing a lot of meditating, and I kind of got to this place where like, oh my God, my brain has been lying to me. All these, I'll be happy when, I'll be happy if, is just BS. It's not real. And the illusion of consumerism, of like, if you have more stuff, you'll be happier. If you have more stuff than the next, in all that stuff. And I was like, I almost like had this like, I felt like I had the flu or something after like all my thoughts were a lie. And so I had to pick up the pieces, and what I was left with was to savor and serve, like to savor the moments, use my senses to get into the present moment, to look around like, wow, I'm on this show right now, and just like be here now, and then be of service. You can only really feel good about yourself if you're living in somewhat of an unselfish way. So that's my meditation story.
I love that. Well, as a Buddhist, because I grew up a Buddhist, and my parents would send me to meditation camps when I was younger. So like junior meditation camps where it's like 3 days or 5 days, and it's silent meditation. So almost all day you're being silent.
It's tough.
And you have to
age.
chew 30 times before you swallow. So it's a very intense like meditation / like Buddhist camps. But I have a huge appreciation because now as an adult, I have learned so many of these principles since I was very young, so it's kind of ingrained in me. I make sure I stop and literally smell the flower if there's like flowers around me, or like being present, like you said. It is like the key to my livelihood.
Yeah, I mean, that's awesome that you were introduced to those tools.
I was forced, but I loved it. I loved it later. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, people always say, "Oh, I think too much," or "I'm in the future, tripping," but how do I stop? Use your senses. Get into the moment. Look, smell, hear. That will get you into it's like a portal to the present moment.
Have you ever tried sexual meditation?
A little. I'm kind of familiar with like tantric, like getting into like a zone of syncing up your breathing and so forth. Yeah, I'm somewhat familiar with it. Not like Sting. Everybody knows Sting is like the...
I know. There was that one article. Do you remember that article that came out? What was it, on Rolling Stone, where he was like, we have sex for 7 hours?
Yeah.
Sting has sex for 7 hours?
Yeah.
But currently?
We got to review this article next week.
This was like a 20 years ago kind of thing.
Yeah, a long time ago. But
he might still be doing it. He looks pretty good.
He was kind of like the trailblazer of like tantric sex in the West.
Yeah.
Well, explain that. How do I have sex for 7 hours if I want to do that?
Well, like energetic sex. Like being sensual and connected, not like penetration.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Is there any downside to having sex for too long?
No.
No?
Like, I mean, what are you talking about?
Don't get anything done.
Yeah.
But priorities.
Yeah.
But there's no health risks at all of like having sex for 2-3 hours.
Do you mean penetration?
No.
Okay. If just sex, no.
But penetration, should you cap it at a certain amount of time?
Yes.
Really? Like when?
Yeah. Well, when the woman is uncomfortable.
Right.
Yeah.
Like the third in your threesome story.
Yes.
Once they tapped out.
Yes.
Nick, I wanted to ask you, in 1978, the song on the new project, the new EP, you sort of list off these formative experiences, and we talk a lot on Loveline about how, hindsight always being 20/20. there are these moments in our childhood and our adolescence that sort of define us and make us who we are, for better and for worse. And just with the spirit of this project being this sort of look back for you, anything come to mind growing up in Nebraska or things that you...
Yeah, I guess one of the reasons the video that we cut together makes me so emotional is because, like, after that, in 1979, my dad went on a sabbatical, and we all went to live outside Washington, D.C., which was such a culture shock from Omaha, a total white bread existence, to Washington, D.C., which is so multicultural, and I heard rap music for the first time and everything, and then my folks split up after that. So that time that I'm commemorating in 1978 was like the end of a very, very special era when everything was so safe. You know what I mean? So that's why it really touches a nerve.
Yeah. Dr. Tar, would you say that that's universal? Because I relate to that in so many ways, where my grandmother passed away when I was 14 or 15 years old. And that is such a clear marker for me. I don't know if you feel like this about the early to late 1970s, of just the world just seems so different to me before that moment and after that moment. Again, I don't want to say better or worse, but it's such a defining before and after line in my life. And Nick sharing that story. Do you find that that's common with most people? Is that
100%? Yeah. Like the theory of catastrophe. Like when there is a huge thing that happens in your life, there is almost like a life pre and post that event.
Right.
Yeah, and divorce is usually a huge thing for children.
And is there anything that people should look out for in terms of like what can be born out of that?
What
for
do you
better.
mean?
Well, I don't know, just bad habits maybe, or just
for sure.
what that can lead to, both for better and for worse.
I would say if you ever feel like there are a lot of like built up emotions within you, like seek out a professional is best. And nowadays, I mean, lots of services for therapy, lots of insurance like covers therapy. I think talking to someone is a huge help. And when Freud kind of came out and talked about psychotherapy, he was laughed at, right? Because at that time, men of natural science were like, this is bullshit. Can't say that. This is
It's a good catch. She's learning.
Yes. This is BS. Like, this is not real science, right? But then here we are, like therapy being one of the most common modalities of healing in 2025. So I think humans need to utilize that more.
Right on.
Yeah.
Speaking of formative experiences, Nick, I want to thank you and your band for making that song Love Song, or covering that song Love Song, I should say. In case Robert Smith's watching Loveline this week.
The Cure.
Because we all probably remember this, your first makeout ever. And so I was a very nervous young lad, and so I needed everything to be perfect. You sort of do think of it as like somewhat of like a space shuttle launch the first time you're going to go in for that makeout, right? And so I chose 50 First Dates in 7th grade, and I was so nervous that I didn't have the guts to do it the whole movie. And then so the credits started, and I was like, dude, I gotta because all my friends, that, like as a guy, you tell everybody. It's like the Super Bowl pregame show, like the 5-hour Super Bowl pregame show. Recess, the lunch table every day leading up to that weekend, you're like previewing this big thing you're going to do. And so the whole entire movie went by, and I was such a coward, and I didn't make out with this girl. And I thought, dude, I got to go in now. And so the credits started. And so my first ever makeout, as I don't know if you remember, but your song soundtracks those credits. And so we play it on KROQ, like every night we play this song, Love Song. And I always just get taken back to there. But it is funny, like the role, it's funny because you're here and that's your band's song. But I'm sure you even remember your first makeout.
I can't remember what song was playing, but yeah, I remember just how awkward it was that you don't really have the smoothness to be just like, take her face in your hand. I mean, it's just like, all right, I'm going for it. And just you know what I mean? Like, she's ready. Like, there's nothing to do but just get it over with. But yeah, and what was cool about the 50 First Dates soundtrack, it was those romantic songs from the 80s redone in like a kind of island style. So, Stop the World to Melt With You was one of the songs that I produced with Jason Mraz singing for that soundtrack, and Lips Like Sugar, the Echo and the Bunnymen song. So it was a pretty it was all Adam Sandler. Honestly, it was his idea for us to cover Love Song. So a big thank you to him for putting it all together.
He also did some really cool stuff for the Little Nicky soundtrack back in the day. There's actually an amazing version of Change by Deftones, and it's quite literally Chino, Adam, and then the Incubus guys are involved. And it's really cool. It's acoustic. But he's obviously, very talented musician in his own right, obviously on the comedy end. But how did that come about? Like when you say he asked you to do that, what was that story?
Well, he just loved our song Amber so much. He was like, that's the sound I want for 51st Dates. But I want 80s songs redone in that island style. I was like, well, I got lots of ideas. So I started just throwing out romantic songs that I could redo. So I produced 5 songs on that soundtrack, and No Doubt was on it, and Sugar Ray was on it, and but it was because he wanted covers done in our style of Amber that led to that.
That's awesome.
And
That's
it was
really cool.
that was the only time I've really been heavily involved in like a major movie. So like the level of press and promotion and constantly on TV, I was like, that was a moment in my career. Yeah.
On the topic of a song like Amber, right? When you write, whether it's that song Amber or any big song you've written that may be inspired by a person, when you perform it a zillion times and you perform it to this day, do you still get taken back to the sort of source material, the inspiration, the person behind the lyrics that you're thinking of, or has so much happened with that song that it's almost like built upon? You don't necessarily go back there.
No, I think when I'm doing a show, I'm there to be of service to the audience, and knowing how much those songs have become part of people's lives. So it really doesn't go back to that first inspiration as much as just knowing that I'm being of service to the audience. And I loved You're Still the One by what was that, the country singer Shania Twain. Like she does this whole Song Exploder podcast about it, and she was like, I don't like that person I wrote that song about, but I know how much this is part of people's lives, and so when I'm singing it, it's like about them now,
So he was not still the one.
Yeah,
he was
no longer the one.
You did get a scoop out of this interview.
That's right.
That's what we'll lead with headline-wise for this episode. It's interesting though, because I think that a hit. I don't know if you feel this way, but I know a lot of bands do. Your memory of a hit is just those early mornings, how busy your life is, the radio stations, the TV performances, the touring, etc., the music videos that might follow it. Is that what you think about when you think about Amber?
Yeah, I mean, I think of the feeling of how amber, the color, is like the color of a sunset, and I wanted to make everything musically as like warm and soft as possible. So like the guitar tone that's like one, like there's nothing harsh about it. So it was just like just a whole art piece that matched the lyrics with the tones that we're hearing in there. But that was a really slow burn of a song. Like it was the third song that we put out, and we never even played it live until it had been out for a really long time, and then it just really kept going and going like a slow burn for now. It's been a decade and a half, and now all my daughter's friends are like, that's their one 311 song that they love. They like Love Song and I'll Be Here a While as well, but like that softer stuff is something that's really translated to Gen Z or whatever.
It's cool.
Yeah,
it's cool now.
Things come around.
I think someone just talked about it on TikTok. I just saw it.
I'm just thinking like 311 shows must be so crazy nowadays, because you do have Gen Z women that are probably like, play Amber, and then just like some Gen X dude in a baseball hat going like, when are you gonna play Down? Yeah.
Wow, the demographics.
Oh yeah. There's
that push and pull. Yeah.
You were talking about like the color of Amber and sort of maybe that shade of color. There's so many different shades to 311. I think it's you guys are a unique band in that sense, because everyone can have their own favorite 311 song. I mean, you even had crossover hits sort of consistently throughout your career, even leading up to Amber.
We just like to say anything goes that we like in music. So besides hip hop and rock and reggae. There's jazz and funk and Latin styles, and just from all over the world. Whatever we like,
Yeah.
we put it in. So we just want to not have any self-imposed boundaries and be as eclectic as possible.
I affectionately refer to on the air at KROQ, the radio station here in Los Angeles. We play Full Bloom, and I refer to that as sort of like the 311 Megatron, because listening to it, it just feels like you guys got in the lab and we're like, we're going to take every awesome element of every 311 song that everyone loves, and we're going to put it into one song. Was that
I like that.
Was that how it happened, or
Yeah,
no?
I mean, I was saying 311 on steroids, just make every part of our music better. But maybe it's Frankenstein's monster. I don't know. It's like,
I mean, it sounds amazing. You know what I mean?
It's a great
you.
sex song.
Full Bloom? Have you had sex to that?
Yes.
Have you really?
And Amber.
Really?
go on.
Has that ever happened during an interview? Yeah.
Dirty, dirty
Talk
sex.
more about that. Have you ever heard that during an interview? You've probably been on a lot of wacky
I
morning
mean,
shows.
yeah, I've known it's a makeout song, but it's nice to have it confirmed.
It's cool when the doctor's like right here, though. You know?
Yes, it is. It's
Now-
like, don't you feel like, okay, do you listen, like, do you play music when you have sex?
Sometimes. I feel like the longer the relationship goes, like if it was casual sex, almost always music. But if it's like, your girlfriend of a very long time, I think you get to a point where like the intimacy is so rich that you don't really need a distraction.
Yeah, I would say like if it's casual sex, you listen to like Ja Rule. If it's like long-term
Rule.
relationship sex, you listen to Amber. Right? Because it's more vibey.
If I ever walk by your apartment, I hear like
Ja Rule.
Mesmerize pouring out, I go, oh, she's getting lucky tonight. Well, Nick, the EP is out now, Waxing Nostalgic. Are you going to tour this at all? Are you going to play any like, local gigs about it, or is it more just getting it out in the world?
Yeah, just getting it out in the world. We'll see. Just super excited for 311 Day, which it's an off year. Like every other year, we do like a huge concert on 311 Day, but this one will just be kind of celebrating in our own way. And then we do our cruise and summer tour. And what's great is that we've got all this new music to play from Full Bloom, the album. So we're really excited to do like the live debut of a lot of those songs. We've got a lot of rehearsing to do to make sure we're like ready for the cruise and the shows coming up.
Definitely. Well, Nick, thank you so much for, I guess, the mugs. Do we have a number? 13th time?
I'm saying 15.
15th. There you go. 15th time on
Yes.
Loveline. We'll be back with more.